Discover the incredible moment a homeless woman sang, transforming hearts and inspiring thousands. In the shadows of the skyscrapers, Laura's powerful voice soared, a ghost of a memory wrapped in crude layers to ward off the biting cold. Each note tumbled from her lips, infused with years of loss and the sorrow of a life spent in desperation. The hustle of Chicago encircled her like a relentless tide, washing away her dignity with every passerby who ignored her humanity. She felt like a spectre haunting the very theaters that once celebrated her artistry. Memories of laughter echoed in her mind. Her family huddled around the piano, singing along, joy enveloping them like a warm blanket. But now, those harmonious days felt foreign, taunting her with their bittersweet beauty. Laura sang a haunting aria, her heart pouring outward, desperate for recognition. She caught a glimpse of people's faces. Most of them were veiled with indifference, their eyes darting rather than engaging. One or two dropped coins into her hat, but it didn't matter. She craved connection, feeling the ache of being unseen and unheard. What was she even doing here? Was she deluding herself into thinking that her voice could still captivate? Struggling against a wave of self-doubt, Laura chastised herself. She could no longer afford hope. Just then, a youthful figure caught her attention. Jake, with his tousled curls and determined gait, paused. The air around him vibrated with purpose, yet he seemed inexplicably drawn to her. The unexpected presence sent a ripple through her. Could someone like him even care? Her heart raced, and fear fought against the flicker of hope that ignited within her. He approached, eyes bright with enthusiasm, and offered her a lifeline, promising to rekindle her talent. The suggestion sat heavy in the air between them, and inside, Laura wrestled with disbelief. How could a bright-eyed dreamer understand her world, where every day bled into despair? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's proposition lingered like a double-edged sword, sharp and unyielding. As time passed, they collaborated, crafting melodies from the wreckage of her past, but with each moment spent together, tension thickened. Friends warned Jake. A talented producer shouldn't tie himself to someone labeled as unworthy. Did he really care? Or was this just a fleeting dalliance? Could he stand against the scorn of society that deemed her worthless? Laura watched uncertainly, each ounce of hope met with fear. Would her resurgence as an artist cost her the only person willing to see her as she truly was? Now, as Laura prepared for her first stage in years, the weight of the moment compressed her chest. Doubts surged, mixing with determination. What if this was her chance to reclaim her dignity? Would Jake remain beside her against the judgments looming in the shadows? The stage loomed ahead, a chasm filled with possibility, yet tinged with the spectre of societal prejudice. Heart-racing, mind-battling despair, she wondered how their story would unfold. Would courage conquer fear? Or would hesitation rip apart the connection she desperately wanted to cling to? Laura stepped onto the stage, the bright lights casting her shadow large against the polished wood beneath her feet. Each beam seemed to pierce through the darkness she was accustomed to, imbuing the moment with an urgency she hadn't felt in years. As her heart raced, she fought against the swelling tide of self-doubt, drawing on the fragile thread of hope Jake had ignited. A hush fell over the audience, the stillness sharp enough to cut through the anxiety that coursed through her. They were here, staring at her, their expectations hung like heavy weights. In those early moments she could feel Jake's presence behind the curtain, a silent supporter ready to catch her if she faltered. But would he shield her from the scorn she feared, or make her feel more exposed? There lay the conflict, a dangerous gamble, not just on her performance, but on their inexplicable bond. Closing her eyes, she breathed deeply, inhaling memories of her family's laughter and her childhood joy. The colors and sounds blurred in her mind, slowly transforming the painful reality into an echo of what could be. A new beginning. With a small nod to herself, she opened her eyes and focused on a single face in the crowd, a stranger who looked curious rather than judgmental. As the first notes escaped her lips, Laura unraveled the layers of her despair, unspooling every bitter chord and aching nuance into the space around her. The voice that had once been confined to darkened corners surged forward, raw and powerful, demanding attention. This was her declaration, her anthem born from struggle, each note a reminder that she was still here, still alive. Yet even as she sang, a whisper of doubt clawed at her resolve. Had she ever really been worthy of the stage? Was this voice, this talent, truly deserving of the light? She had once reveled in the audience's love, but now the affection felt out of reach, as if they were responding to a ghost rather than the woman before them. But as the song culminated in a crescendo, Laura felt a shift in the room. The heaviness of apathy slowly began to peel away, replaced by a palpable sense of connection. She dared to glance toward the back of the theater where Jake stood, a look of awe etched across his face. In that moment, her newfound vulnerability became strength. Instead of crumbling under fear, it was empowering her to take every risk necessary. When the song ended, applause erupted like a wave, tumbling forward, swallowing her in a tide of approval. Yet, amid the excitement, a seed of anxiety lodged itself deep within. Would this moment, too, be fleeting? Could she withstand the scrutiny that would inevitably follow her first triumph? As Laura scanned the audience, searching for validation and acceptance, she saw mixed expressions. Some people clapped enthusiastically, but others wore confusion and disbelief. The contrast sent a jolt through her. The adoration of a few could quickly be overshadowed by the skepticism of many. The stage had given her a voice, and an identity she had feared was long lost. Now it held a mirror to her renewed self-awareness, exposing not only talent, but vulnerability and fragility. Would this success lead to deeper scrutiny of her life? The realization that success could come with an added layer of challenge sparked a brewing internal conflict. How could she benefit from this moment without losing herself again in the crush of public perception? Jake emerged into her peripheral vision, his eyes shimmering with pride, and she felt a warmth that almost banished her doubts. But would that warmth endure when the shadows of outside judgment crept in? Tonight was just the beginning. The pressure of maintaining this newfound identity would bring its own trials, the very thing she had clamored to escape. And as she stepped off stage into the comforting embrace of Jake, the uncertainty lingered in the air. The real battle had just begun, and Laura knew she had to face it head-on. What lay ahead for her, both on and off the stage, would test everything she had fought for. Would the fragile connection she had formed with her audience withstand the strain of public opinion, or would she risk losing it all yet again? The moment had come to confront the truth she had long avoided. As Laura descended from the stage, the thunderous applause still ringing in her ears, her heart danced between elation and trepidation. Each clap felt like a reminder of the sharp contrasts in human interactions. Love interspersed with doubt and joy that quickly turned to concern. She pushed back against the tide of skepticism swirling in her mind. But as she met Jake's gaze, she saw not just pride, but a glimmer of fear of what might follow. The intoxicating thrill of her performance began to fade behind a curtain of anxiety. What would tomorrow bring? She could sense that her small victory tonight had exposed her to a world that could just as swiftly turn from adoration to scorn. Was she ready for this? On the drive home, the silence in the car became oppressive. The vibrant energy of the evening slowly dissolved into a weight that sank into Laura's chest. She turned to Jake, searching for reassurance. Did it feel authentic? Her voice shook slightly, revealing her vulnerability. Did I really connect with them? Jake turned, his expression earnest. It was beautiful, Laura. You were raw and real. They felt it. Yet there was a shadow of doubt in his eyes that mirrored her own feelings. Did you feel the ones who didn't connect, the ones who seemed confused? She pressed, a nervous tremor in her words. What if they see me as a failure tomorrow? That's not how it works, he replied, his brow furrowing in thought. You can't internalize their doubts. You owe it to yourself to embrace the moment. This is the beginning of something if you let it be. Accepting failure was becoming a daunting concept. Laura felt the pressure of expectation coiling around her, tightening with every passing second. The buzz of the crowd's energy transformed into an oppressive pressure to produce more, to continuously validate her worth. The weeks following her performance were an emotional roller coaster. The applause morphed into a constant refrain in her mind, reminding her of the highs and scattering shadows of doubt amongst her triumph. Hometown newspapers covered her story. Some heralded her as a rising star, a symbol of resilience. Others questioned her authenticity, framing her path as a tragic tale rather than a powerful revelation. Discomfort swirled in her chest each time an article turned a compliment into skepticism. Could she remain grounded when public perception became the judge of her worth? The dizzying heights of success now pivoted precariously against the depths of reenacted memories she thought she'd escaped. Those fragile moments of connection felt as though they were created by someone else, taunted by persistent whispers that she might never fully emerge from her past. In the quiet of her apartment, Laura wrestled with her self-expression. The guitar, sitting in the corner, became both her refuge and reminder. Each strum echoed the struggle in her mind, too vulnerable or too rigid. She contemplated sharing her truth through written words, pouring her soul into songs, or creating a representation of her struggles on paper. Yet, with every note, she paused. Would it resonate or merely add fuel to the flames of judgment? After days of uncertainty, she decided to compose a new song, capturing her experience in a raw, unfiltered light. It became more than just notes. It was a cathartic release. The chords echoed with her fears and hopes, her doubts swirling with a fierce determination to transform them into something tangible. Just as she finished, an unsettling thought invaded her mind. Could she perform it publicly? What if the scrutiny was worse this time? Would the audience still see her as someone who deserved the stage? She resolved to record it, but kept hesitating, biting her lip as she wrestled with her fears. With every ounce of courage, she scheduled a small open mic night at a nearby cafe. It was a step, but an uncertain one. As she stood in front of the mirror, heart racing, she questioned the strength of the voice she was about to unleash. The weight of judgment pressed in unwelcomed whispers. But what if this time she walked on stage, not just to collect applause, but to face the echoes of her past head-on? Would revealing her true self fortify her resilience or expose her to deeper layers of vulnerability? What awaited her? A fresh start, or another chance to confront her greatest fears? There was no turning back now. It was time to confront the audience, and perhaps even herself. The real journey was just beginning. Upon arriving at the cafe, Laura's pulse quickened. The air thick with the smell of brewed coffee and the muffled chatter of patrons that felt both inviting and suffocating. She had envisioned this moment, each step leading to passionate strums of her guitar that would echo her soul's narrative. Yet with every glance at the small crowd, a cold wave of fear washed over her. What if they didn't understand? What if her truth, laid bare, drew more jeers than cheers? She felt the burden of expectation clinging like a weighted blanket. For a moment, she questioned if her song was even worth sharing. This inner turmoil clashed violently with her desire for connection. Both sides wrestled for control, leaving her in a state of paralysis. She took a deep breath and clasped her guitar. Its worn neck was familiar and comforting, but also a stark reminder of her vulnerability. The instrument had always been an extension of herself, and now it felt like a bridge between her hidden self and the world she desperately wanted to embrace. In a corner, she could see Jake's reassuring presence, giving her a small nod, signaling that he believed in her. That flicker of support sparked something deep within her, a flicker of hope. What would it mean to stand up there unmasked? To let the fears that had haunted her become a melody? The host called out her name, and a hush fell over the room. Her heart raced as she approached the mic. With each step, she grappled with the decision to share not just a performance, but her story, the tangled web of doubt and desire. Beneath the surface, she began to recognize a growing resolve. She wanted her audience to feel the rawness, the human experience intertwining joy with sorrow. As she took a deep breath, the familiar chords of her new song resonated through the cafe, weaving a tapestry of emotion. Her voice emerged, tentative at first, but soon gathered strength from within. The words flowed as streams of self-exploration, revealing her insecurities and celebrating her resilience. She sang of confusion and hope, painting pictures with every note that flowed from her heart. Each line was a revelation. Her perception shifted as she observed expressions shift in the audience. They were no longer mere faces, but a collective experiencing her journey. The heaviness of uncertainty began to lift, replaced by an exhilarating sense of connection. Then through the haze of performance, she spotted a woman in the back, her hands clasped tightly, eyes glistening with tears. For Laura, that singular reaction sliced through the noise of doubt and amplified her resolve. If her vulnerability could touch just one person, hadn't it been worth it? She poured herself into the final chorus, voice swelling with raw emotion. The words carried not just her story, but also the silent struggles of many. The notes echoed and mingled with the listeners, weaving a symphony of collective experience that transcended individual fears. As she finished, an electric silence enveloped the room, the weight of her honesty hanging in the air. Moments stretched into lifetimes as she sought the reactions of those who had witnessed her metamorphosis on stage. And then it came. A wave of applause crashing against her, invigorating and liberating. But even amidst the accolades, another whisper emerged within her mind. Was this truly the end, or merely the beginning of a complex journey towards self-discovery? Laura stepped down from the stage, feeling lighter yet guarded. What awaited her beyond this fleeting moment of triumph? She had faced the echoes of her past, but did she possess the resilience to embrace the future? As countless questions flooded her mind, a singular thought crystallized. The next chapter was waiting to be written, and she would have to confront her deepest fears again. What other layers of herself remained hidden, waiting for that first spark of courage to unveil them? Would she dare to explore not just the applause, but the depths of her authenticity? As she walked away from the stage, she realized that the real challenge lay not in the performance itself, but in the unraveling that awaited her next. Laura moved through the cafe with a distinct lightness in her stride, yet uncertainty shadowed her thoughts. The applause still rang in her ears, a tempest of approval melded with her own internal questions. Each step away from the stage framed her newfound courage against the backdrop of lingering fears. In that flickering spotlight, she had revealed a fraction of her soul, but the degree of exposure weighed heavily on her mind. As she approached Jake, who wore an encouraging smile, a thread of doubt unwound within her. He had seen her vulnerability, and now a symbiotic pressure built. She had to validate his belief in her. "That was amazing, Laura," he exclaimed, pulling her into a quick hug. Her heart warmed, but alongside it brewed a gnawing anxiety about sustaining this momentum. "Thanks," she replied, her voice a strained whisper. "But what if that was it? What if I can't do it again?" The question trembled on her lips, revealing a fissure in her practical bravado. Jake regarded her soberly, his expression a mixture of concern and encouragement. "You won't know until you try. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It lies in confronting what scares you." His words resonated, embedding a seed of resolve within her but also amplifying fear's echo. As the evening wore on, Laura avoided the gaze of other patrons. Each compliment felt like a reminder of the steep expectations that awaited her next attempt. What if they scrutinized her more closely now? What if the world expected her to replicate that magic? As her gut twisted with inadequacies, the fleeting moment of triumph began to sour. She decided to sit alone at a corner table, her guitar resting like a guardian at her side. The cafe thrummed with life, but it felt distant, as though she were observing from behind a glass wall. The performance had transformed her connection to music from a private sanctuary into a public stage, but she didn't yet feel worthy of it. While others chatted and laughed, Laura's thoughts roamed through her past. Memories of rejection and doubt resurfaced, the bullies of her childhood wielding their hurtful words like daggers. Would her future performances resurrect those ghosts? Groans of inadequacy crept in, urging her to abandon this new pursuit. And yet, a small part of her rebelled. What if she shifted the narrative? Instead of being a performer bound by the expectations of others, what if she honed her craft for herself? The realization dawned, clarifying her focus. This journey had to be about her self-expression, not mere accolades. It was time to reclaim her narrative. Gathering her courage, she pulled out her notebook, a collection of half-finished lyrics, and jotted fragments of inspiration. The cafe's atmosphere, once stifling, began to pulse with potential. Each word she wrote countered her doubts, revealing a raw honesty she hadn't truly embraced before. She was transforming the weight of expectation into a canvas of self-exploration. She felt invigorated, her anxieties slowly dissipating within the rhythm of creation. The sounds around her became a backdrop for her thoughts. The clink of glasses, the rustling of pages, these became her allies, embedding themselves in the heart of her lyrics, merging the external with her internal rhythms. As she penned a new song, an idea took hold, hypnotizing and daunting in equal measure. Instead of hiding behind her guitar, she envisioned launching a small gathering, a chance for her and others to share songs, thoughts, and experiences. Would an open mic format allow her to engage deeper with herself and others? It felt audacious but necessary. With newfound determination, she glanced toward Jake, who had noticed her shift. "I'm thinking of organizing something," she revealed, excitement tinging her voice. "An open mic, maybe." The challenge ignited something within her, a commitment to dive deeper into her transformation. But as the evening wore on and the cafe began to empty out, Laura soothed her emerging doubts, but also invited new fears. Organizing an event meant stepping even further into the unknown. The thrill of possibility was laced with the terrifying thought that failure could loom. What lay ahead required not just audacity, but acceptance of her flaws and strengths alike. She scribbled furiously, seeking clarity through her musings. Would she have the strength to embrace both success and failure on this journey? The next step loomed before her, a precipice teetering on the edge of her self-discovery as she fought to balance excitement with fear. The real question remained. Would she dare to take that leap? The morning light spilled through the cafe windows, a warm invitation that clashed with the cold knot of trepidation tightening in Laura's gut. She sipped her coffee, feeling its heat seep into her hands, yet it couldn't thaw the apprehension brewing inside her. Today she had to act on her vision. It was time to confront her fears head-on. Jake had suggested reaching out to a few friends who might be interested in sharing their music. He believed creating a supportive environment could help everyone, herself included. This idea flickered in the back of her mind, edging her toward excitement and terror simultaneously. Who was she to lead? The self-doubt that had lingered since her performance clawed at her resolve. She glanced around the cafe, studying familiar faces. Some she recognized from her childhood, and others were simply patrons enjoying their morning rituals. Each one of them seemed to embody a story, but now their narratives felt intertwined with hers. Could she muster the strength to share her own? Would the vulnerability of standing behind a microphone resonate with her or expose her vulnerabilities even further? As she pulled her notebook from her bag, the pages fluttered, revealing fragments of her thoughts, little pieces of herself yearning to be heard. The idea of an open mic transformed from a whimsical dream into a tangible challenge. She felt the weight of this decision, a delicate balance between ambition and cowardice. Nevertheless, her fingers danced over the paper, writing a draft for an announcement. Looking for performers. Join me for a night of sharing, connection, and raw expression. But who would come? She hesitated, her pen hovering above the page, already predicting rejection in the silence that would inevitably follow her invitation. Would anyone care to join her on this journey? As she teetered on the line between eagerness and doubt, the possibility of disappointment loomed large. Steeling herself, she inhaled deeply. What if that disappointment was a necessary part of this process? What if she tried and failed, but learned something vital in the process? Her heart raced, and she felt the rush of implications flooding her mind. What if this open mic wasn't just a test of her ability to perform, but an exploration of authenticity? Would this create space for others like her, who held their voices back in fear? With clarity emerging in her thoughts, Laura began to envision the night, lighting, supportive faces, laughter echoing amid heartfelt vulnerability. She longed for a space where each voice added a layer to a bigger story. Her own insecurities seemed trivial when framed by the collective experience of sharing and connecting through music. As the hours crept forward, Laura found herself unnecessarily rehearsing what she would say before potential participants. Yet in the moment of solitude amid fading daylight, she tasted her own resilience in every note she had written. She realized that leading with authenticity required more than just raw talent. It necessitated a heart willing to brave the critique and feedback she had avoided for so long. Fueled by this drive, she decided to post her idea in a local online forum, inviting musicians and lyricists. With every word she typed, her heart raced, pulling her farther from doubt and closer to empowerment. The click of the post button echoed like a small gunshot in her mind, crushing her insecurities just a bit. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Each notification layered new anxiety atop her anticipation. What would the responses reveal? But more than fear flickered inside her. It was curiosity and hope, crackling like electricity beneath her skin. Suddenly, the weight of validation transformed into something else entirely, a commitment to the journey she had chosen. As the initial stage fright slowly faded, a thrilling question loomed larger in her mind. What if her story ignited something in others? What if her vulnerability, shared in that intimate space, did more than entertain? What if it ultimately empowered her, helping her confront the very things that tried to keep her silent? The moment stretched before her, hungry for the answers hidden just beyond her reach, and as she took a breath, anticipation coiled around her determination. The upcoming night wasn't merely about the open mic, it was about the freedom to be imperfect. What awaited her on this new path could unravel everything she thought she knew about herself, one note at a time. And the question clanging in her mind echoed relentlessly. Would she have the courage to step into the spotlight again? and allow her heart to sing. The notifications kept coming, each one adding another layer of anticipation to her resolve. Laura felt the mix of dread and excitement spiral in her chest, a sensation both familiar and foreign. She stood up from the cafe table, her notebook tucked under her arm, determined to mark this day with action. Each response felt like a small affirmation, a nudge forward, whispering that she wasn't alone in this quest. Outside, the busy streets were alive with the rhythm of the city, but Laura noticed only the stillness around her heart. Solidarity emerged from those digital sparks. The isolation that once consumed her began to fade as she considered that others might share her yearning to express and connect. Could it be possible that her long-held fears were, in fact, shadows of a shared human experience? With a newfound sense of purpose, Laura headed home. She allowed her mind to wander along the possibilities of this open mic. What stories would emerge from the faces she had yet to meet? A subtle thrill washed over her, warming the chill of insecurity that still lingered. She imagined joy, tears, laughter, and everything in between. The palette of human emotion danced in her head, vivid and alive. Yet, lurking behind this vision was the darker hue of doubt. She needed to confront the frail threads that had kept her feeling smaller than she was. As evening settled in, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of herbal tea, staring down the last few notes she had cobbled together. Part of her felt the urge to highlight her own journey, to bear her struggles, as if exposing her scars might somehow validate her worthiness to lead. She hesitated, considering how much she wanted to reveal. Did others even care? Would it resonate, or would she merely bore them with the weight of her path? No more hiding, she finally decided. The evening would be as much about her healing as it was about everyone else's. She picked up her pen, her mind blazing with thoughts. This open mic wasn't just a showcase of talent. It would be a celebration of resilience, a shared exploration into bravery. Laura crafted an outline for her introduction, focusing on the power of vulnerability. What if her raw narrative could help someone else unleash their own voice? Her heart raced at the thought. She wanted to invite people to not just hear her story, but to find empowerment in their own. Formulating her message became as essential as the music itself. Her words were the bridge between fear and courage. But as clarity washed over her, shadows whispered caution. What if they judged her? What if, in exposing herself, she fell short of their expectations? This inner dialogue escalated, confronting every reason she had held on to for so long. Yet another part of her fought back. Those nagging whispers were simply echoes of insecurity and past experiences. They were not absolute truths. Taking a deep breath, Laura closed her eyes, remembering moments from her past that had sparked joy within her, that had driven her to pursue music in the first place. The thrill of performance, when everything fell away and only the song remained, beckoned her again. It felt vital to recapture that authenticity and lay it bare, not just for her benefit, but for the resonance it might create. There was no more time for hesitance. She opened her eyes, folded her outline, and put it beside her notebook. With her heart beating in sync with her resolve, Laura knew she would step into the spotlight that night, not just as a performer, but as a voice for those too afraid to sing out. The mic would no longer symbolize fear, but connection. What awaited her was uncertain, but exhilarating. Would she rise to the occasion and inspire not just herself, but others to embrace their shared humanity? As she made her final preparations, the bubbling excitement mingled with a tinge of fear. The question rippled through her thoughts once again. Could she truly transform that evening into a moment of shared revelation? With one last glance at the time, she smirked to herself. Tomorrow would bring everything she feared and desired all at once, thrusting her into a reality she had only begun to imagine. And the stakes were higher than ever, as the night's outcome promised revelations, both for her and those who would answer her call. Laura awoke to the soft light of morning filtering through her window, but the excitement of the previous day hung like a delicate veil over her consciousness. As she lay there, the weight of what was about to unfold wrapped around her like a blanket, both comforting and suffocating. She threw the covers aside, feeling the chill of the floor beneath her feet. Each blade of grass outside seemed to announce the day she had been both savoring and dreading. Her mind raced as she prepared for the open mic. How would she manage the delicate balance between sharing her struggles and maintaining the poise expected of a performer? The echoes of her self-doubt crept in. What credibility did she have to inspire anyone? Yet the moment she picked up her guitar, the familiar weight of the instrument anchored her. This was her voice, her tool for connection. After a quick breakfast, she stepped outside. The air was brisk, invigorating, as if nature itself was encouraging her to step forward. Each block she walked felt like a small victory against the hesitant thoughts that lingered. A street performer caught her eye, strumming an old guitar. He played with raw passion, unbothered by the passers-by who hurried on. Laura felt a pang of recognition. It was this authenticity she hoped to tap into. As the day unfolded, her focus shifted to a mental rehearsal. Each note and word played over and over in her head, morphing from apprehension into resolve. She practiced not just the music, but the very essence of her message, her desire for vulnerability, to create connection. The thought that her story could resonate with even one person filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. The evening approached quickly. The hour grew, then slipped away, leaving Laura with a knot of nerves in her stomach. Standing in front of the mirror, she examined herself. Was she a performer worthy of taking the stage? Her typical self-critiques bubbled to the surface, nagging at her confidence. But she also saw determination in her eyes. The trembling hands that could easily betray her resolve had also held her story for way too long. Laura stepped into the venue, the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation. The dim lights illuminated a small crowd, faces ranging from excitement to indecision, each person on the verge of something new. She was but one among many, but this was her stage tonight, and the mic awaited. The host introduced her, and the room quieted, a hush of collective curiosity falling over them. Laura felt the weight of their eyes searching for authenticity, searching for connection, a mirror of her own search. She took a deep breath, steadying herself against the tide of expectation. As she began to speak, her voice was steadier than expected. It was a risky vulnerability, the kind that pierced through her armor. Her story flowed, each word unlocking layers of emotion, not just for her, but for the crowd before her. She shared her struggles, the moments of isolation that had woven through her life, each revelation a thread binding them together in shared experience. The crowd's reactions fueled her, a ripple of understanding glimmering in their eyes. Laughter broke out at her lighter anecdotes, and moments of silence fell like snowflakes with her more poignant truths. It was exhilarating to witness the ebbs and flows of connection materializing through her voice. But as she approached the climax of her narrative, shadows of doubt threatened to creep back in. Would this bravado be enough? What if her story, powerful as she intended, turned out to be just her own? A solitary note amid a symphony. She needed the courage to strip away the barriers she'd maintained her entire life. At that very moment, she locked eyes with a woman in the front row, a stranger whose gaze flickered between admiration and empathy. An unspoken exchange electrified the air. It propelled Laura to dig deeper. She steadied herself, revealing the vulnerable layers of her journey and the precious lessons learned in the dark. The risk was unsettling, yet liberating. Each raw confession came with a burst of clarity. She realized that the magic was in their shared humanity, connecting her story to those of the people before her, igniting sparks of recognition, pain, and possibility. As the final notes drew nearer, she felt less like an isolated performer and more like a channel for collective healing. But just as she prepared to close, a single haunting thought pierced through her triumph. Could she truly walk away from this experience unchanged? The mind rattled with fear and possibility. Laura glanced again at the woman. Encouraged by the gaze that rooted her to this moment, she grasped the mic tighter. "And this isn't just about me," she said, her voice reverberating with newfound strength. "It's about all of us finding our voices together." The eruption of claps and cheers rose like a tide, washing away insecurities. But amid the applause, a new question loomed. How would she navigate the reality that would follow? Would the courage she summoned tonight provide the foundation she needed to sustain this emerging voice within herself? As she stepped off stage, her heart was racing. She had embraced the vulnerability, but now a deeper reckoning awaited her. The moment of truth had come. But what truths awaited her beyond the comfort of the stage? The applause echoed in Laura's ears as she descended the stage, forming a comforting cocoon around her racing heart. Each clapping hand extended not just admiration, but an invitation to step further into the light she had begun to discover. Yet, just beneath the surface of that momentary thrill lay an unsettling current, whispering questions that tugged at her newfound resolve. What would happen next? She had opened a door within herself that had long remained shut, but what if it simply swung back, closing her in once again? The crowd dissipated, laughter and chatter mingling in the air. Yet Laura lingered at the edge of the stage, feeling the gradual retreat of the adrenaline high into a grey apprehension. "Hey, great job out there," a voice broke through her reverie. It was the woman from the front row, the same one whose gaze had anchored her. It was then that Laura noticed a small group of admirers had gathered around her, faces still gleaming with the reflection of the evening's passion. "Thank you," Laura replied, forcing a smile that felt almost foreign on her face. The warmth radiating from their compliments momentarily propelled her forward. It was intense. "You were powerful," the woman said, her sincerity lifting Laura's spirits further, even as her internal doubt threatened to overshadow the truth. "I felt like you were speaking right to me. Your story hit home." A flicker of connection sparked in Laura, a shared moment of humanity. I didn't expect it to go like that at all. She was surprised to find herself confiding. I was terrified. "Well, you didn't show it," someone interjected, laughter threading through the compliments that flowed like a gentle tide. Yet, beneath the praise, a troublesome thought pressed in. Had her courage come from a genuine sense of self, or was it merely the escape from fear that had driven her to the microphone? As the group began to disperse, Laura hesitated. She had just laid bare her vulnerabilities, but what solid ground awaited her now? She felt untethered, afloat in the aftermath of her own honesty. The more she replayed her words, the more they danced around the notion of authenticity. But what remained beneath the surface? Had the performance been a temporary lift, or was there substance to build upon? Deciding to act, she slipped over to a nearby table, cluttered with a jumble of empty glasses and forgotten introductions. A few writers and poets were huddled together, animatedly discussing their craft. Engaging with others felt vital, the next logical jump in her growth. "Mind if I join?" she asked, letting her voice carry across their conversation. The startled heads turned toward her, but instead of retreating, she pressed on, willing herself to step into this next arena of exchange. "Of course," one of them gestured, inviting her into their fold. They spoke excitedly about their own journeys, their setbacks and breakthroughs mirrored by Laura's recent experience. For a moment, she felt the surge of camaraderie envelop her again, echoing the warmth of the stage. Yet beneath their enthusiasm, a gnawing realization set in. These people had tangible projects, backgrounds that articulated their artistry clearly. She was struck by a sudden pang of self-awareness, recognizing that while she had taken a brave step, she now faced an entirely new mountain to climb. The artistry was not solely in vulnerability, but also in the commitment to transform that vulnerability into craft. What would her next step require? Could she unearth the threads of her narrative and weave them into a cohesive embodiment of who she was, a full artist, not just a performer? The night continued, but every clink of glasses and laughter around her left Laura feeling both exhilarated and deserted, a keeper of a new journey, yet uncertain of its path. That elusive next step loomed ahead, glimmering yet obscured, as she contemplated the choices waiting in the shadows. Should she forge her own path, perhaps ignite a project surrounding her artistry? Or did she just desire to belong, to continue expressing herself like she did on stage? Breathlessly, she swept her gaze through the crowd again. Each face appeared hopeful, their uniqueness emphasizing her own confusion. The moment to make a decision tightened around her like a noose. The thrill of connection still lingered, but now it came with responsibility. In the midst of her thoughts, she caught sight of a flyer pinned to the wall, among other announcements. It boldly proclaimed a call for submissions. Her pulse quickened. This could be an opportunity, a chance to take the raw energy from tonight and mold it into something more resilient. But what would she submit? Was she prepared to structure her feelings into something more than performance? The challenge illuminated her anticipation and doubt in equal measures, intertwining possibility with fear. As her heart raced with this realization, she knew she stood at a precipice, one that could launch her into a new realm of expression. Yet a lingering question took root. Was she ready to transform this fleeting moment into a lasting impact? The path to answer that loomed larger than she had anticipated. With the flyers dancing before her eyes, Laura felt the urgency of a decision brewing. The question not only of what to submit, but of how far she dared to stretch her new identity pressed upon her. The stage had been her rebirth, but the real test loomed ahead, where courage would be stripped bare against the harshness of reality. Would she seize it or falter under the weight of expectation? The answer held the promise of transformation, or the risk of returning to her own cocoon. As dawn broke, Laura stood before her mirror, the sun's early rays illuminating a fresh determination in her eyes. She had spent the night contemplating her performance and the connection she had felt with the audience. What was once anxiety now transformed into a quiet strength. Here, at the cusp of possibility, she would dive into this journey of self-exploration and rebirth, shedding the remnants of doubt. Her fingers danced over her guitar, each chord resonating with a newfound sense of identity. She felt like an artist at the brink of creation, ready to mold her experiences and emotions into something impactful. Chris's encouragement echoed in her mind. The suggestion that she write and submit something, the culmination of her struggles and triumphs, began to breathe life into her artistic spirit. With a cup of coffee in hand, she scribbled in her notebook, capturing the essence of her journey since returning to the stage. The rawness of emotion surged through her fingers. Each stroke of the pen sculpted her story into tangible words. Maybe it wasn't just about the bravery she had mustered on stage, but also about forming a narrative that reflected her growth and hard-earned wisdom. This was more than just a performance. It was an evolution. As she pored over her experiences, from heart-wrenching fears to triumphant expressions, Laura felt a seismic shift within her. She was no longer just a woman seeking validation. She was revealing herself piece by piece, crafting a tapestry of truth that interconnected with universal human experiences. Vulnerability evolved into courageous storytelling, blossoming into artistry. Days turned into nights as she finalized her submission. The initial fear that had seeped into her mind began to dissolve. Each affirmation she gathered from friends and supportive patrons fueled her confidence. Every song she crafted became a testament to her rise from shadows. each lyric illustrating the ongoing struggle and unearthed strength that characterized her journey. When she clicked send on her submission, the weight of uncertainty lifted momentarily, replaced by exhilaration. This was her moment for recognition, not to eclipse the doubts of others, but to shine in her truth. Her heart raced with both anxiety and achievement. She was stepping beyond her limits, inviting others to witness her interwoven story. As the weeks unfolded, Laura embraced her transformative process without apprehension. She began attending local workshops where writers and musicians gathered, exchanging insights and honing their crafts. Here, she found an inspiring community. Among fellow creators, she recognized that every story could connect threads of shared experience, the laughter, the relapses, and the soaring victories. Each person's journey ignited inspiration in her, emphasizing that transformation was a collective experience. One bright afternoon, Laura received an email that delighted her. Her piece had been accepted for publication. The joy rushed through her veins like electricity, illuminating her heart with validation that had felt long sought after. Recognition, however, didn't feed her self-worth. Instead, it confirmed what she had found within herself. She had architected her place in the world and had built it on authenticity and courage. Her contribution ignited conversations at the local gathering corners, and soon her voice began to resonate beyond her own experiences. When she returned to the cafe for the next open mic, there was a palpable shift in her demeanor. Standing tall before the audience, she shared not just songs, but stories woven into melodies, stories that depicted her vulnerability and resilience. As the applause crescendoed, she felt a sense of inner calm wash over her. She was recognized for her work, but more importantly, she recognized herself as an artist worthy of sharing her narrative. Each clap served as a reminder that she was no longer tethered to her past, but was rooted deeply in her evolving present. Laura continued writing and performing, crafting messages that connected with audiences in profound ways. She transformed her art into workshops that encouraged others to explore their voices, inviting them into the sanctuary of shared expression. The woman who once sang alone on the chilly streets now commanded space in the hearts of many who yearned for their stories to be heard. Through her continuous efforts, she established a charity initiative dedicated to supporting aspiring artists facing hardships. By fostering a nurturing environment, she hoped to spark the same trajectory of transformation she'd experienced. Laura had become not only a voice for herself, but a beacon for those who felt invisible, inspiring them to break free from their confines. In the reflection of her progress, she realized that authentic stories hold the power to transcend individual confines. Laura stood tall, infused with a solid confidence and recognized competence. She had accomplished both personal transformation and mastery of her art, successfully mapping a path that didn't just encompass her struggles, but celebrated the human experience in its entirety. As she took a moment at her next performance, she remembered that cold Chicago street corner, singing to the wind and the shadows. Now she stood, facing a sea of bright faces, using her artistry to illuminate their shared hopes. No longer a ghost haunting the past, she was finally home within herself. It is only through support from steadfast fans that stories like Laura's can inspire and uplift. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you never miss another exclusive emotional journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help more people discover stories of perseverance. Comment below to share your reactions or theories about the ending, because your voice matters. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the urgency in fostering shared narratives. Join us in this journey.